Good evening once again, everybody. Get through some of our technical difficulties and we'll get the show on the road. Hopefully everybody's had a nice dinner. We're now at the point where we'll get involved to induct tonight's inductees of Pete Wolfgram, who was faculty and coach. William Eberhard from the class of, I see, 1970, 1971. Could you graduate twice from Wycliffe? I think it was 1970. And Chris Lambert from the class of 1972. Again, thank you for being here tonight. This is always a fun event for the Alumni Association each year. You may or may not be aware that we kind of flip-flop the Hall of Fames. Tonight is achievement, and next year we'll be getting together and we'll be inducting people that were, or alumni that were members of, the Blue Devils and sports and things of that nature. So at this point, I'd like to call up Rhondell as she'll do the honors for Pete Wolfgram. And for those of you who come up, we've got two microphones. We kind of need to use both of them. So there's the handheld and there's this one because we're streaming things tonight. So if you just hang on to the one.
I'll try, but I can't chew gum and walk. So I hope this
Although Rhondell, being a rock and roller.
I'll stop.
No, wait a minute. I mean, let's be honest. The Rhondell should be inducted as being the Pat Benatar of Wycliffe High.
Oh, God. No.
No, really, I've seen her perform a number of times, and I thought I saw Pat in the audience, taking notes.
Give me the thumbs
Oh,
up.
yeah, without question. Without question. So, Rhondell, take it away.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Good night or good evening. My name is Rhondell Cesarelli, and I am a proud blue and gold graduate of the class of 1982. Be kind, don't do the math. Before I introduce the next, or the inductee, I want to personally thank Bob Smith. Yes, absolutely. He's a former teacher. He's my first employer because I babysat his kids. He's a mentor, longtime friend, and my co-author for this speech. It takes teamwork with something this important to make it turn out just right, and I want him to know that I'm grateful for his contribution. Peter R. Wolfgram, a.k.a. Wolf to most of us, is the embodiment of the Renaissance man. Wycliffe's own Leonardo da Vinci, if you will. During his 43 years in the Wycliffe School District, Wolf held the role of, now get comfortable, math teacher, football coach, wrestling coach, softball coach, tennis coach, guidance counselor, and theater director. Annually, for 29 years running, Pete wrote, produced, directed, and performed the Rockefeller Road Review. The Rock, as it became to be known, was an original show Pete created consisting of skits, music, dancing, and a lot of that Wolfgram humor, which nods its heads at the locals and the inside school community, but anybody who didn't have blue and gold running through their veins still enjoyed. Each show was unique, and it would be performed 5 times and then retired forever. So Pete would tell the cast, this is your show. No one else has ever done it, and no one else ever will. The Rock was and continues to be one of the most popular traditions at Wycliffe High, and the baton was passed to Phil Mata, who is a present faculty member and an alum, and with the help of friends and colleagues, he took over when Pete retired. During his last 6 years in association with the Wycliffe School District, Pete coached softball and was assistant athletic director. All of this post-retirement. Everything Pete did, he didn't do just well. He did with his personal touch of perfectionism and with a lot of heart. He made a positive and lasting impact on hundreds of students and team members and colleagues. In fact, the entire community of the city of Wickliffe, as proven by the fact that he was inducted into the City Hall of Fame in 2011. Peter R. Wolfgram, a multi-talented individual who selflessly donated his expansive and diverse talents during an entire career to a community he loved. Sorry. And now I am beyond happy and content that the place that Pete called home for so many years is giving some of that long overdue love back and inducting Wolf as a most fitting and deserving member of the class of 2021 into the Achievement Hall of Fame. Pete couldn't be with us here tonight any more than in spirit, as he has been challenged by some health issues over this last year. His wife, Karen, is here tonight to accept his award on his behalf. Thank you. Karen?
So now that Rhondell's made me weepy, I wasn't planning on accepting this. I thought Bob Smith was going to accept it for me. But thank you very much, Pete. It's very honored to have this. And, of course, all of you know his life was here. So thank you.
I'm sure there was a lot of us that have seen at least one of or more of the Rockefeller Road reviews, and every one of them I always found to be just tremendous. The shows, the way the students were involved, the way the teachers were involved, it just, the pride that would well up because it was, from Wickliffe High School, created by someone with a, Rhondell, your speech was wonderful, and Pete, a wonderful individual, and there's a lot of love here, and I'm sure those that are watching tonight are thinking of him tonight and going forward for all the right reasons. So congratulations, Pete Wolfgram. I didn't play football, but I remember when he first came in the Wickliffe school system, I believe he was a teacher down at the old junior high school, and this would have been my 8th grade year, and I can tell you that the first game that he coached, our guys went out, and we had to play Forest Park, and they plastered Forest Park, and I remember the guys afterwards saying how much they wanted to do it for Mr. Wolfgram. So, he had an impact on a lot of people for many years, and this is a tremendous honor that I'm personally glad to see that it's finally happened. So moving along, William Eberhard, one of the things I think that's amazing about where we're from, be it City of Wickliffe or Wickliffe High School, we've got people that have gone on and do great things from all walks of life. And Bill Eberhard is one of those, and he came through Wickliffe High about 4 years before I did, but he went on to do some amazing things in architecture, and we're, honored to be able to, bring him into the class of 2021. So at this time, I'd like to bring up William Eberhard from the class of 1970 as we induct him into the Wickliffe Schools Alumni Achievement Hall of Fame. William?
JD's coming up to present, Bill.
Oh,
I'm not William. I'm Joe Dank. I will introduce
There
Bill
you go.
Eberhard. I'm an engineer, and I've worked for Bill he's a good friend and an architect that I've worked with for a lot of years. He's very demanding. If I don't do a decent job here, I may need help getting out of this room. Bill decided to become an architect at the age of 13. While most 13-year-old kids decide to play NBA basketball or NFL football, Bill examined his 9-second time in the 40-yard dash and his 9-inch vertical jump, and he considered alternatives. His intellect and creativity were ideally suited to a career as an architect. He parlayed his Blue Devil diploma into a bachelor degree in architecture from the University of Cincinnati. His first assignment was as a co-op with Visnapu and Gady, and the firm asked him to increase his class load in order to accept more responsibility. So he seized that opportunity to attend the Architectural Association of Architecture in London. And upon returning was named the Director of Design while still in school at UC. After 10 years, he was recruited to open the Cleveland office of Oliver Design Group. That was a Pittsburgh-based interior design firm. Bill brought creativity and distinct design to corporate workspaces. His first project was McKinsey & Company. That effort established interior architecture as an important ingredient in the corporate identity of a company and the importance of a well-designed workplace in employee productivity and satisfaction. His work over the years has raised the practice of interior design to a new level. He's been recognized with 58 awards, 8 are national, 28 regional, 22 local. He's also been published nationally over 20 times. He's an outspoken leader in the community. Some might suggest a little too outspoken. He's served on the boards of Vocational Guidance Services, AIA Cleveland, and the Building Envelope Council. He's a founding member and president of the Cleveland Architectural Foundation. And I'm proud to introduce Bill as an Achievement Hall of Fame inductee.
I'm a little astonished to be here. It's very flattering. Thank you very much. It's also a bit astonishing. I'm a small architect in a small town, and Cleveland is not a town that's particularly enthusiastic about its local architects. Since the Blossom Music Center was done in 1967, not one major project in Cleveland's been awarded to a Cleveland architect. So it's been a colorful experience to practice here and strive for things. If I'm at all worthy of any of this, I need to discuss with you the degree to which success requires talent and effort and luck. And I'm going to share with you some of my luck experiences, because without any of these experiences, I'm not here tonight talking to you. My first major luck experience is in 4th grade, where my father, who was a Protestant minister, gets asked to move to Wycliffe to open a new church. And right down the street is the Fellowship United Church of Christ that Dad founded and got built. And so in 4th grade on a Friday, I'm in a class of 45 people at Benjamin Franklin Elementary School on Spring Road in Cleveland, in what was basically a Gulag archipelago concentration camp environment. And on Monday, I'm in Mrs. Bell's class in Lincoln Elementary on the 2nd floor, facing north, in a class of 22. And if you grew up in the Wycliffe schools, you have no idea you probably didn't think of how lucky you were to be in that kind of an environment. So I went from being a closed environment where if you spoke, you were sent to the principal's office, to an open environment that was interactive, where I could talk to my classmates and talk to the teacher, and the teacher would work over your workbooks with you directly. And it just became a very open, interactive learning experience, at a point where they tell you 4th, 5th, 6th grade is when you learn how to learn. And I feel so lucky to have come to Wycliffe at that point in my life, because the doors kind of opened for me. My second big lucky charm was my parents suffered from a lot of the bourgeois middle-class rituals a lot of people did, and they decided that I needed to go to school for art and music, and so they sent me to the Willoughby Fine Arts Association. I'm not sure what it's called now, but I think you all know what it is. And that taught me a lot about line quality and art and shading and all those fun things, and the music part was just kind of a blessing, and it got me started on a path towards looking at different possibilities, and I feel blessed for that. My third big lucky charm was when I was 13. Both of my grandparents were recruited to move to Cincinnati at the turn of the last century to work in the machine tool industry in Cincinnati. So I had 22 aunts and uncles and 37 cousins in Cincinnati, and two of the aunts from the southern part of Germany, 50 miles south of Stuttgart, lost their husbands to the Nazis in World War II because they were fighting with the Yugoslav partisan resistance. And we get a letter that spring from Aunt Emma, who wants us to drive to New York City to pick up Kristen, her daughter, and take her to a summer camp in Pennsylvania. I met her in '85 and asked her if she had any idea what that drive was like, and she thought, oh, it's the same as driving from Stuttgart to Munich, which is 160 miles like driving to Columbus, and she was shocked when I explained to her it's 550 miles, and it wasn't the same at all. But so my dad says, you want to come along? And so I say, okay. And so we drive to New York City, and we pick up Kristen at the TWA terminal at what was then Idlewild Airport, which is now JFK. And if any of you saw this last year when this terminal was refreshed and reissued as a Hilton Hotel, it's the great terminal designed by the great architect R Saarinen, and it looks like a couple of birds' wings. And I walked in there and said, wow. My first comment was, how did they build this? Because it's this wonderful soaring polymorphic space like birds' wings, which don't come together because they're separated by skylights. And my second comment was, I think it would be interesting to be the person that got to think of this kind of stuff. And so I was so lucky to have that experience. Couldn't wait to drive her back in the fall when she was done with school. And that was a really kind of a Rubicon pivotal experience for me. My fourth big lucky charm was Lowell Grimm. Some of you might know Lowell Grimm for the wrong reason, for his being in the junior high school when the crazy guy walked in November 7th, '94 and started shooting. I know Lowell Grimm because he was my industrial arts teacher who taught mechanical drafting. And this is a guy who basically took what little I learned at the Willoughby Fine Arts Association and taught me how to draw. He taught me how to draw mechanically. He taught me how to sharpen a pencil, which is you sharpen it at a 45-degree angle, so when you draw it across the page, you turn the pencil so you get a straight line. If it's a solid point, you get a line that grows, and it's not right. So he taught me about orthographic projection and perspective and isometrics. And so Lowell taught me how to draw, and I guess because I learned a couple of things at Willoughby Fine Arts, he gave me different assignments than he gave the other guys. And if I did something well, he'd put it up in the hall in the display cases. And so I owe Lowell a great gift for teaching me how to draw mechanically and kind of allow me to progress on this path I thought might be interesting. My fifth lucky charm was Wycliffe High School. I was there at a time when we had people like Benz and Ruth Fuller and LeMay and Charlie Frank as our teachers, people that were really committed to helping you learn. They looked at you as individuals. It wasn't just a job, it was a career for them. And I can't say enough about Charlie Frank. If any of you were here a couple of years ago when I inducted Charlie, he was a special guy. He looked at us as individuals. He looked at us as individual musicians. He saw us as an individual musician within a group, whether it was your section or your horn section or your flute section or the percussion section, and then he saw you as an element in the whole. And not many people will read you that many times, that many ways, and look at you on those levels. But the most important thing for me about Charlie was he heard and saw things we could do that we didn't see. He picked really difficult music for us to do. He challenged us. He even had music commissioned and composed for us that was really a frickin' bitch to play. I remember Rich Cole and I believe that the material he picked for the symphonic band was Wycliffe Variations. And there was a xylophone piece in there that poor Rich Cole got, and I got the timpani piece. And I remember Rich and I just working our tails off to learn these parts and play this music that when we first looked at it, we said, this is really college material. This isn't, but Charlie knew we could do it, and he helped us. But the most important thing about me for Charlie was he showed me so many different ways to motivate people. You could motivate people by praising them, by cajoling them, by just encouraging them. You can yell at them, you can scream at them, you can berate them, you can humiliate them. And I saw Charlie use all of those different ways of reaching people and be very effective with them. And Charlie's the best mentor I ever had. He gave me those lessons that allowed me to deal with the people I worked with in the percussion section at Wycliffe, at Cincinnati, at all the jobs I've had and the firms I've been with since then, all two of them. And so Charlie helped me learn a lot about life and how to interact with people and try and be effective at reaching them at their level to the point that we could motivate them and try and share some objective together. And I'm really grateful and thankful for that. My sixth lucky charm is Universal Metal Products, which is about 200 yards east of Warden Road on Lakeland Boulevard. And this is a company that made metal stamping parts for the auto industry primarily and the airline industry. And after 8th grade, the three guys on my street, Johnny in order, Jimmy Gutowski, and I decided that we needed to get some jobs because we needed to take girls across the street to Petty's Pizza after football games and pay for it. And so there was a point where we decided we would get summer jobs, and we were going to bother Johnny in order's dad, who was a vice president at Universal Metal Products, to help us. And Jimmy and Johnny got jobs out in the factory floor, sweeping up floors, moving the materials to heat treating and whatever. And I got a job with the draftsman upstairs on the second floor. And this was a guy named Harry Kuhn from Essen, Germany. I don't know what he did during the war, but he took what I learned with Lowell Grimm and put it at another level. They had about 1,200 drawings of these metal stampings that needed to be drawn and taken down to the factory floor so that the parts could be compared and verified from a quality control so that Ford and GM, these different companies, would accept them. And Harry taught me how to draw better, harder, faster. And his great saying to me was, Bill, you got to push more the pencil, because we didn't make Xerox copies of these. They made them on a blueprint machine in the old days with the old ammonia and the light, and it was thicker paper so that you could put it on a clipboard and take it down to the factory and use it, and it wouldn't be destroyed in a day. Well, Harry, we had about 1,000 drawings, and because these were mostly small stamping parts made on 4-slide and punch press machines, most of these drawings were 8.5 by 11 vellum drawings. And there were about 200 that were on larger drawings, but about 1,000 of them were this small drawings. And he kept them in files in a pedestal file in his drawer. And one day he dropped a cup of coffee on them and ruined about 500 of them. So this was job security for me. So for 2 years during the summer and 2 or 3 days a week during the school year, I got to go down there and basically redraw all this stuff. And so Harry basically taught me how to draw at a much higher level than Lowell Grimm had done. So by the time I got to college, you don't know me, I wouldn't want you to misunderstand this, I was maybe a half step ahead of my other colleagues. And so I feel lucky for that. I was lucky to choose to go to Cincinnati. I applied to Southern Cal, Cornell, and UC. I chose to go to UC because they had a co-op program where you go to school straight for 2 years and then you alternate semesters between work and school, 6-year degree. That's a grind, and a B.Arch degree, which today is a master's. But I chose to go there because that was a way to afford to get through school, which made sense for me. And the work experience there turned out to be really terrific and dynamic. So it's December, at the end, close to the end of my second year. I was in the band. We had a group of 17 lovely women who were called the Bear Kittens. They're no longer called the Bear Kittens because that's politically incorrect. But at the time, they were the 17 hottest babes on campus. And I was lucky enough to be dating one of them. And so at Christmas break, second year, we're in Cindy's mom's kitchen in New London, Ohio, in Lorain County. And she's explaining this co-op program to her mom, who was an operating room nurse at Fisher Titus Hospital in Norwalk. And Cindy's basically saying, you know, he's been told by the department that he needs to make a few phone calls to architectural firms and get interviews when he's back here in March at the end of the second year. And she says, well, we just put a stent in Royce Jennings' heart, who's a big contractor. And he was saying what a terrific experience he was having with an architect he was working with right now in Cleveland. Why don't I call Royce? And she picks up the phone, and this is a Friday, calls Royce. He says, Royce turns out to be an engineering graduate from the University of Cincinnati who says, can you have him here tomorrow morning? So Saturday morning we go in and I show him my little portfolio of drawings, which included still some stuff from Lowell Grimm and Harry Kuhn, as well as my work at UC. And he makes a call and reaches one of the guys at Visnapu and Gady in Cleveland. And they say, well, have him here Monday morning. We're kind of busy, but maybe this can work out. And so I go in on Monday morning. They hire me on the spot and ask me if I can start immediately instead of when the semester ends. And so we make a couple of calls and that works out. And that turns out to be really a magical, special experience for me that I'm so lucky about because this was a 22-person firm that was doing a remarkable range of projects. We were doing a big single-family house for a Ohio executive. We were doing an armory for the National Guard in Stowe, a 14-story apartment building in Cleveland Heights, a 7-story apartment building in Lima, a small church in Avon Lake, a really large church in Westlake. I could go on, but for me as a student, this was every different structural type of building you could possibly get involved with. And the beauty for me was all the guys in the drafting room were graduates from Case Western Reserve University. A month after I started, Case lost its accreditation with the National Council of Architectural Registration Boards because they weren't teaching design. They were teaching buildings design, building science, and construction technology, which is what they really don't teach you in college. So the beauty for me was I'm in a place where I'm interested in helping them design, and they can teach me all of the things I didn't know. So I got to do details for a couple of months, and they seemed to be a little bit surprised at how fast and well I did them, thanks to Lowell Grimm and Harry Kuhn. And I started getting to work with one of the principals on doing design stuff. And I go back to school, and my classmates are running blueprints and doing door details. And here I am designing a church in Avon Lake. And so it was just a stroke of luck that I would end up in the right place at the right time to have these opportunities for somebody my age to be doing things that if you did everything right, maybe 10 years after you're out of school, those opportunities fall for you. And so I was so lucky to have that opportunity, but also so lucky to have been prepared for that opportunity to be able to try and take advantage of it. My next great experience, as Joe mentioned, was this London opportunity. I come back in fourth year from double sectioning and find out that we're going to do an exchange program, in the Architectural Association in London then and today is known as the best architectural school in the world because the people that are on the faculty there are the best authors in the world writing about architectural theory, the best designers in the world. And so I was there for a whopping 4 months, but like a sponge, I picked up everything I could and came back with a theory about what to do and how to do it that has propelled me forward. And the greatest blessing then was to stumble into this opportunity to work for the Pittsburgh firm Joe mentioned. This started in a very colorful way because I went to Pittsburgh and interviewed with the 6 different divisions of this company, which was actually a large commercial real estate company, and the design firm was a division of the company. And they had hired a marketing director in May, and this interview is happening in September. And this woman didn't like me at all. And the idea was she was going to come to Cleveland 2 or 3 days a week and help us market and spend the rest of her time in Pittsburgh. She starts coming to Cleveland. We get along pretty well. We end up getting married. She moves to Cleveland full time. She opened so many doors for us and got us so many very interesting projects that I couldn't have done by myself. The president of the company said, Linda has a zero call resistance. If Ronald Reagan had a project to give, she'd get an audience and get the job for us. And that was true. She got us wonderful opportunities for wonderful clients that I never would have been given an audience for at the time, all by myself. So you take away any of these good luck charms, and I'm not here tonight. And so I thank you for taking the time and somehow finding me in the field of people that escaped Wycliffe High School well. And I think I did, but I was so lucky. I'm really profoundly grateful and touched that you found me and that you would evaluate and judge my work to be worthy of standing here tonight is something I'll remember for a very long time. Thank you very much. I have to take something down from the wall.
All right. Great story there, and congratulations there to Bill Eberhard. And once again, you know, it just goes to show the people in Wycliffe or the teachers in Wycliffe that all have had some lasting impression and done some great things. I remember mechanical drawing with Mr. Grimm and how we had to spend, even to this day, if I have to like do a dimension for like electronics and doing the way he did the arrows, and he would grade you on it, and it was, you know, the precision was incredible. I was probably not as good as Bill, but to this day, it's like if I'm doing it, I can feel Mr. Grimm over my shoulder saying, Fody, if you don't get it right, it's either a love tap or a powerhouse out in the hall, for some of you who may remember. All right. By the way, the plaques that the inductees are getting, there's also a plaque that will be put on the display that's up at the high school, and we will have a new area in the new building where the Hall of Fame plaques for athletics and achievement will be on display. And from what I understand, the new facility is coming along. It's ahead of schedule, and last I was told is they're under budget, which is a pretty cool thing. So lastly, one of the things Dave Hintz and I were having and Rhondell, we were having over dinner a friendly argument about the 80s and the 70s, right? I'm proud to say that being a graduate of the 70s, we had the best rock and roll. I'm sorry, guys. That 80s stuff with what were those hairdos you guys had that was influenced by MTV and all that goofy stuff? Well, the reason I say that is Chris Lambert, who is from the class of 1972, and we'll have his inductor come on up here, has done a lot that is tied into rock and roll and writing and things of that nature, and I'm sure we're going to learn a lot more about that. So our last and final inductee tonight will be about Chris Lambert from the class of 1972. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Hello, good evening. My name is Chad Wacha. I am the store manager for the Barnes & Noble located at the Great Lakes Mall in Mentor. I have known Chris for 10 years. Feels like a lot longer, but it's been 10 years by my records. I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of great people in my business, a lot of local authors, and when Chris asked me to induct him into this event this evening, I felt honored. Full disclosure, I did not go to Wycliffe. My kids are fourth generation in Kirtland, and my son's 10-year-old soccer team continues to lose to the Wycliffe youth soccer 3 years in a row. So we'll get past that someday. But I was very happy to be here tonight for a good friend, Chris, and everything he's done. So since I've only known him for 10 years, I missed a lot of the fun stuff, his 70s, his 80s. I go, is there anything that you would like me to include in this presentation for you tonight? If you could shoot me a couple bullet points and let me know, I'd appreciate it. I go, sure, no problem. Well, I'm waiting for the email, and I get an email from Chris, and then I print it out. I'll show you the email he sent me. The definition for bullet points for Chris and for myself are a little different. But for those of you that know Chris, this is about right. He has done some pretty incredible things looking at his resume. The fact that he was in high school and writing for Scene magazine, pretty incredible. The people that he got a chance to meet in the 70s and 80s, really some incredible stories. Almost as incredible as the haircuts that Chris had at that point as well. So if you get a chance to talk to him, the stories are great, but make sure you see the pictures too. They're worth it. We've had a lot of chance to do some opportunities for events in our store. Chris, a very successful local author, he's had over 30 books, and most of them are in my store, and they sell extremely well. He's done a lot of great events at local conventions, and he is asked to speak on multiple different things. This is a guy who has written not only for Cleveland Scene magazine, he has written, had a column in News Herald for over 10 years. He has written for the White House, he has written for magazines, he's written for newspapers, and this is a guy that still gets asked to speak at conventions and speak for different radio interviews and newspaper interviews and online interviews as we speak. I really appreciate the guy that he is too. He does a lot of events for us at the store because he wants to. He wants to talk to people about science fiction and fantasy and about writing and about Orson Welles. It's really been great. And one of the fun events he does every year, you may not know, Chris Lambert is a close personal friend with Mr. Jingling. So he goes to the Halley Building, goes to Higbee's, and they come to our store every year to sign the books that Chris had wrote about Mr. Jingling. They come, they sing the songs, the crowd that shows up just to see Chris, just to see Mr. Jingling. I'll tell you, it's one of the fun parts about the job. Chris, really honored that you asked me to come in tonight. I really appreciate it. What you've done for the store, what you've done for me, what you've done for millions of people that are out there as far as readers, it's really pretty incredible. I'm honored to have been here tonight, and really congratulations on your induction into the 2020 Hall of Fame for Wycliffe. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you, everybody. Everybody, the last few minutes have been mentioning a lot of rock and roll stuff and my connection with that, writing for the Scene magazine at the age of 16 and 17. So I'll bring up something I wasn't even going to talk about. I'll say that getting this award is very knocks me back on my feet. And in fact, in the rock and roll vernacular, I'd say that I'm saying the same thing that John Lennon said when he won an award early on with the Beatles. To win this type of award, I thought you had to drive tanks and win wars. So I really do appreciate this because it sort of came out of nowhere the last year and a half. I still get tickled at little things like the fact that I was mentioned, quoted in a national magazine. The Philadelphia major newspaper praised me, and I was lucky enough to be mentioned on network television, and the person who wrote that was just reminded of that. But I want to thank, before my comments start, I want to thank, well, everybody here for showing up. I want to thank Teresa, who I went to school with, or Terry, and Patty, who no longer works in the ex-Patty Hintz, who has been on the phone with me off and on the last few years, and Sherry Koski, who was intricate in sort of putting my name forth. I want to thank you, the three of you, very much. And the people at my table, Chad, who just introduced me, Jim Kreisel, Dan Shannon, a longtime friend Winnie Oworski, my wonderful wife Liz, my agent Angie, and she's also my friend. Thank you all for showing up. In the brochure, before I start my little comments, it says on the bottom that because of me, Kenny Loggins wore a Wycliffe Blue Devils t-shirt. The reason that was because I skipped out of school, ran down to interview him. A dear friend of mine, Johnny Oworski, drove me because I was too young to drive. And I had my Wycliffe Blue Devil t-shirt on, and he asked me, how do you get one of those? I said, you go to Wycliffe High for 4 years. He said, I don't have 4 years. How else can I get it? I said, I'll send you one. He gave me his address, which up until a few years ago I still kept in my wallet. And I wore that outfit because then I had to have my friend Johnny drive me back, and I had to sneak back into school in time for gym class. So that, but my comments are a lot about teachers, books, and writing. The writer Boris Levin, screenwriter, wrote a movie called Creator. And in the movie, he had Peter O'Toole state the line, words can be wonderful things. And I've sort of kept that in the back of my head all my life and through my career, because I've used, as Carl Sagan would say, billions and billions of words. And my wonderful wife is probably squinting right now because she's heard half of those billion words over the dinner table the last few years. The writer Sam Rolf, who was the creator of The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and Paladin, Have Gun Will Travel, he wrote an interesting line where one of his characters said, teachers are very important, for without them, every generation would have to rediscover fire and recreate the wheel. And my teachers have been wonderful, who I'll mention in a moment. And the last of the Wycliffe High School, or what leads to the high school thing I'm going to talk about in a minute, was the award-winning writer, editor for Washington Post, screenplay writer, Pete Hamill, not to be confused with the award-winning musician Pete Ham, but Pete Hamill. And I got to meet Mr. Hamill a few years back, and he made an interesting comment to me about how much he loves books. He said, "Chris, I have over 10,000 books in my personal collection. Now, had I not purchased those books, today I would have a lot more money in the bank. But I would not be any richer." And I sort of believe in that too. Words, books, teachers, they're all important things. And in fact, again, my wife is probably about to squint because I have 22 bookshelves in my house. And in a sort of Neville Chamberlain appeasement fashion, I had to clear off 2 or 3 of those recently to let her have a space for her knickknacks. So I applaud my wife. The teachers here at Wycliffe, the most of them that I had, wonderful. I'll mention some names, and one who I just got reunited with after a half a century. Ken Rinaldo, wonderful. Fred Dolan, John Grillo. In 9th grade, Miss Smaldone. In 10th grade, Miss Schaefer. I already liked Shakespeare and plays and things like that, but she sort of pushed that up a little level so we could understand plays and stage work on a better level. And so in honor of her, I say, I'm paraphrasing something she made us memorize, "The quality of her mercy droppeth as a gentle rain upon her students beneath," where we could catch her wisdom and use it in our lives. And so to those bunch of Wycliffe High School teachers, I thank you very, very much. I had some other teachers in my life when I was very, very little. I moved to Wycliffe when I was 3.5 years old, right on Mapledale Road, if anybody knows the far, far side. One more street and you're in the old sheep farm. You know, if you pass by Douglas, then you're into Willoughby. My dad once told me when I was about 4, "Hey, pal, what are you speaking to all your little army men for? Why don't you're just reciting lines. Don't memorize all that. Write it down. You're doing a screenplay or a book." And I thought, well, that's a pretty good idea. My next teacher wasn't a high school teacher, but an elementary school teacher, Mr. Charles Fatika, who he and I took turns taking each other to lunch the last several years. And he finally got mad at me and said, "Would you please start calling me Chuck, Chris, instead of Mr. Fatika or Charles?" I said, "It took me half of a century to learn to call you Charles. Please give me more time before I start calling you Chuck." I just have that respect for teachers. And he said, "Chris, when you do your 5 little words for spelling stories, and you write a page or two so that I know that you know what the spelling story words are all about, you don't have to add a 50-page handwritten novella on the end of it every week." And I said, "Oh, okay." He said, "But before you stop doing that, could you do me a favor? Could you write a sequel to last week's spelling story? Because I really liked it." So I thought, okay, well, this is great. I'm being talked about a sequel. This is like Hollywood time. And then I had, besides Phil Scarry, who could not be here tonight, and my editor at the News Herald, Trish Ambrose, who were wonderful to me in my career. Phil, I call him the original Dr. Phil. While I was still in high school, he had me lecturing 18 and 19-year-olds on how to write when I was still 17, because I had already been writing professionally for 2 or 3 years. So I thought that was sort of, but he worked it out with the dean where I could be a guest lecturer. And I spent many, many years at Lakeland doing that. But one of the last teachers was Johnny Oworski, the man who I moved in Wycliffe when I was 3.5, and he was about 4 or 5 years older than me, but he never talked down to me. He said, "You know, we're going to play, we're going to be pals, and we stayed that way." And then back to the rock and roll that a few of you have mentioned that has sprinkled throughout my career. When I got old enough to really get into like, oh, I've got to grow my hair long, I've got to start listening to somebody besides the Beatles and do this and this, I called Johnny across the street, and I said, "Johnny, I just called Warner Brothers Studios downtown Cleveland, and I've got an interview with George Harrison's protege. Could you drive me down there?" And he said, well, yeah, that'd be a great idea because I could take pictures, you could do the interview, and we'd be like a photojournalistic team. And I thought, yeah. Then he said, I know, the real reason is you're too young to drive. Yeah, that's the, he said, sure, hold on. And he ran over to my side door, because I think back in those days, everybody in Wycliffe had a side door, you know, and he stuck his head in and said, Mrs. Lambert, I'm taking Chris downtown to interview famous rock stars and make lots of money. Is that okay? My mom must not have been paying attention, because she said, yeah, Johnny, that's all right. Just make sure you keep an eye on him so he doesn't get into any trouble. So unfortunately, my dad, Mr. Fatika, and Johnny have all passed away within just a few years ago, within a relative short time of each other. And so I wish they could have been here to sort of cheer me on, and except for Johnny, he would probably tease me first, then cheer me on later, and call me for the next 6 days in a row and tease me some more. But as I'm starting to wind down here, I just want to say that to those three people, especially, and my wife, of course, and to dear Johnny, I dedicate this award with my 16-year-old picture on it to Johnny, and his wife, Winnie, who I've also known since I was quite young, is here. So I hope she enjoys these words I say about my dear Johnny. And so I've known Orson Welles' family too, and I've been going back and forth the last 11 years doing a sort of a one-man play. And so a lot of his friends would email me and say, hey, you know, you should put on some, you know, all the stories you've taught all the you know, the classes on him. You've read 42 books, you've written one, you've memorized all the stories. All you have to do is grow your beard long and slick your hair back, and, you know, and I remembered all the stories. So my wife once said during the early appearances I made, I said, well, do I look okay? And she said, yes, but don't add any more padding. You look just fine. I said, but honey, I haven't put on any padding yet. So, but as I wrap it up here, I mentioned Orson because he had a great tale, sort of sense of wisdom. He said, you can always have a happy ending to any story. It just depends on where you stop the story. So I think while I'm ahead, hopefully, I will stop and say that I remain humbly before you the same person that I was when I was 3.5 and entered Wycliffe for the first time. Usually with a smile on my face, always thinking of imaginative thoughts, and both the little guy and Chris 2.0, the older one, we both have our hearts anchored deeply into the wonderful city of Wycliffe. So I want to thank everybody. I hope there's a few little laugh stories in there that you could enjoy. But thank you very, very much. I appreciate this. I'm going to talk to this award quite a bit and polish it, and then, you know, on to my other what would you bucket list things. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.
Then maybe, not now. The beard's to cover my face.
Just to remind them about taking photos.
Oh,
Yes, go ahead.
we'll get to the photos. You know, and before we wrap things up, and listening to Bill and Chris, it touches my heart because when you think about the city of Wycliffe and you look at it on the map, it's this little postage stamp city, right? And a few years ago, I had the opportunity, I'm not trying to make this about me, but I want to focus on Wycliffe here. I had the opportunity to do some work. I've become pretty good friends with a gentleman by the name of Gary Katz. If the name rings a bell, Gary was the producer of a rock and roll band by the name of Steely Dan. Matter of fact, Gary texted me just about an hour ago because he knew I was doing this tonight, and he, you know, we lived vicariously through each other through sports and music, and wanted to wish everybody for Wycliffe his congratulations. But the reason I'm saying this is that about 4 years ago, I was doing some work, and Gary took me to a little recording studio in London to get some technology evaluated. That little recording studio was known as Abbey Road. And I got to tell you, that day, and I have a picture, and I said to Gary, excuse my language, how the hell does a kid from Wycliffe High School get to be walking around in the hallways where the Beatles did, you know? And then I want to share that because, you know, Chris, you probably, the thing about it is that you could sense how humble, you know, Chris is and how humble Bill is. And we all know how humble, you know, Mr. Wolfgram is. And by the way, Mr. Smith, and you're always telling me, call me Bob. You'll always be Mr. Smith. I guess that's how we were brought up, Bob. But I wanted to share that story with you guys and keep it short because it still amazes me the things that come out of 44092. And, you know, when Mark Tennant and I and Scott, we do the football games, I like to say that Football Night in America begins in Wycliffe, and at the center of the universe, the zip code is 44092. So, you know, Chris and Bill, Mr. Wolfgram, you've further solidified that theorem in my life. Again, a huge thank you to all of you for being here tonight or clicking in on the network. And you know, I'd say if we can, one more round of applause for this year's recipients. Thank you all very much.